welcome. Why don't we kick this thing off? We're going to talk about the hiking of the Wonderland Trail. I've got our slides shared, and I'll just kind of forward through, but we'll probably just kick things off with, what are we going to kick things off? Oh, that was actually not supposed to be there. Didn't take that off. Introductions. I don't know why you thought it was my idea, Derek. It was actually, I think.
It was not my idea.
I thought it was your idea, actually, Jeff, because we were
Was it my idea? Oh, okay. Well, I know you had. So you had done you attempted to do the Wonderland Trail once before.
Yeah, and I think it was we were at I think the Teton. Maybe I'm wrong, but we were at the Teton half marathon.
Yeah, and we were trying to think of what to do next. Yeah,
right. And the one we wanted to do next was the Colorado one, and that wasn't happening. They only do it like every other year.
That's right. Yeah.
And then I think you're like, well, hey, why don't we do the Wonderland Trail? Because I think I had just failed like earlier that year or the year before. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So just quick introductions. I'm Jeff Hester. I'm the founder and chief adventure officer with Social Adventures, and we host the Six Pack to Peaks Challenge. And we're hosting this week, which we call Homecoming 2022. And we have a bunch of different sessions on different topics. Tomorrow we have two going on. We have one that's going to be just for fun, like hiking trivia and game stuff with some prizes. And then I'm going to be sharing sort of a keynote on what's new for 2023. We have a lot of new stuff coming and a lot of people excited about what we're doing for the next year. And I'm pretty stoked about it. So I'm looking forward to sharing that. You can find that information on the events calendar on the website, if you could get there. And you can find me on Instagram at the SoCal Hiker. Jason, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, I'm Jason Fitzpatrick. I'm backpacker and a filmmaker. If you know me, it's probably for a mile and a half. And yeah, been hiking, backpacking forever, and have done the Wonderland Trail 2.5 times now, or a little over 2.5 times.
And Derek.
Yeah, I'm Derek.
100 Peaks.
Yeah, I'm also known as 100 Peaks. I'm hiker, backpacker, camper, traveler. Grew up camping and backpacking, had a big gap, and then later in life really started going backpacking and kind of getting into it. So this particular trip was my longest trip ever by probably over 2 times. Most of my backpacking trips are like 30-40 miles, so this one was definitely a change of pace. And yeah,
longest one today at that point. Have you done anything longer since then?
Yeah, just this year we did 100 miles in Greenland on the Arctic Circle Trail. My daughter and I did that, and it was all above the Arctic Circle, and it was incredible.
That's awesome. And they can see the photos and stuff at 100 Peaks, I'm assuming.
Absolutely, you can. And I have a blog post and all that.
Awesome.
All written up.
Let's see if I can figure out this technology here. I've got 2 screens going on. So this is the Wonderland Trail. For probably everybody on here knows what it is because you were curious enough to join. But in case you don't, it circumnavigates Mount Rainier in Mount Rainier National Park in Washington. And it's about 93 miles roughly, although my GPS data, I think I logged a little bit over 100. I don't know, probably I was stumbling in circles at one point. I don't know. But it's a 93-mile, generally considered a 93-mile loop. There's 3 main trailheads. And can you guys see my mouse cursor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's Mowich Lake in the sort of northwest. There is, it's not labeled here, but there's it is Sunrise over here in the northeast. And then there is, why does it do that? What's the one we started from?
Longmire.
That's right. Which is right down here. It's not labeled on there, but it's in that vicinity. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it kind of cool because it's almost divided into thirds. So there's really great places for you can drive to each of those places and park and start in either direction. and just do a loop and you come back to your car. So you don't have to shuttle or do any of those kind of things that you would do like on the JMT.
Yeah. There's also one or two like Maple Creek. There's a couple of other places. I think at least one or two where it crosses the road where you can start if you can't get a permit out of Longmire or whatever. So that's like an alternative.
Yeah. We ran into a couple when we were on our last day who I think they had parked at that Reflection Lake or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And they were done and we're like kind of jealous. I was a little jealous actually because we still had a few miles to go. And I'm like, I just want to be done.
Yeah.
Permits are required. We'll talk a little bit about that, I think, coming up. And the sort of the generally accepted wisdom is that it's best hiked July through September. Would you say? I think any further you start. Depends on the year for sure.
So because I did it July 4th, the time I didn't make it, and there was too much snow. Like I wouldn't really recommend it in those conditions because a lot of it is like what's beautiful about it is when you're up high and you're in the meadows and there's the flowers and the whatever, and if that's all covered in snow, it's not one, you're trudging through snow, and two, it's not quite as you're not necessarily getting the best part of the experience, at least in my opinion.
And it's typically like most people, it seems like they do about a 6 to 9 day itinerary.
Yeah.
Not the 13 day,
Yeah.
Leisurely itinerary we had.
Well, day 2 didn't feel leisurely.
That is true.
Yeah.
Oh, Derek, you want to just take some of these?
Sure. Yeah, I know when I talked to you guys, or I heard you guys talking about going, and then I sort of invited myself. Before I did that, I went and researched to try to figure out like what is really cool about the Wonderland Trail. And the things that I found out that you get dramatic views of Mount Rainier if weather permits. A lot of times it might be shrouded in clouds, and other people have circled the entire mountain without ever having seen it.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of water. You could, like Jason said, the flower show, you get in some of those meadows, and it is amazing flowers. We had blueberries that we munched on. It's really nice because each campsite is sort of designated and very comfortable. They're very well used, so I didn't have to bring a camp chair. There's pit toilets, there's bear poles, so you don't need to bring a bear canister, even though you guys did. And there's just lakes that we swam in, there's rivers we had to cross, there's wildlife. I mean, it's a very beautiful trail that is just around every corner. There's like a nonstop something that just makes that day different than yesterday. So it was pretty cool. There are some negatives, and number one, we'll talk about a little bit too, is like the permit lottery. You may or may not get a permit if you apply for one. We all three each individually submitted different itineraries within the same date span. Approximately, maybe we shifted the dates a little bit, and we all three got denied. We got denial letters, and the negative, which could be a negative, but there's a lot of gain and loss throughout the entire trip. You're not cruising through flatlands or high mesas. So maybe like a little bit here and there, but you are typically either climbing straight up or dropping straight down. The humidity, especially on the western end, is very rainforesty. So this is something you have to accept and get used to. The weather can change. It could rain. It could be super hot. It can, we had a little bit of everything. We had some cool days. We had some hot days. And if the weather's bad, you won't see the mountain. Popular and crowded. We did see some trail runners. And as a result, there was, some micro trash here and there. And, just the usual stuff that happens with the trail that is heavily used. And then, depending on the season, you could get mosquitoes. We got extremely lucky. We only had a little brief area in Devil's Dream where we just got attacked with getting water. But other than that, I don't remember any bugs for the whole rest of the entire trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we got really lucky. But that first day going to get water, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Those mosquitoes were bad.
Yeah. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I think it was Daryl and I who went and got the water.
It was, yeah. Oh, here we go. The elevation. I was going to ask if this was coming up. So yeah, perfect. The elevation gain. Yeah.
Sometimes you think that, I'm going to go around a mountain, and you have this picture that it's going to be, just kind of like gentle hills, and nothing could be further from the truth.
No, my thought, because they're all glacial valleys. So think of it as like just going up and down through Yosemite valleys over and over again, like around the mountain, because that's kind of what it's like. It's again, and there's very little flat, a few ridges, but mostly and then you have the rivers at the bottom, which are maybe a quarter mile, half mile at the most, but by and large, other than that, you're going up or you're going down.
Yeah, it's like climbing from the valley floor to Glacier Point and then going back down and doing it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of visualize it as circling a starfish. You're like climbing up a leg, going back down, and it's like it's kind of what it is. It's like these radiating valleys that you just have to go up and over and go back down again.
Yeah.
And why does it go back? I don't know.
Does the arrow keys work? There you go.
Yeah, I tried the arrow keys and that didn't work either. So.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
There's a nice view. Is that
that's
up by panorama point? Oh, skyscraper. Yes.
Yeah, that was one of the best views I think we had.
Yeah, it was one of the best days too, as far as sunshine and all that. It was just, we were all in a very, very good mood that day.
Yeah, it was a short day too, and there was like food. There was like a restaurant, snack bar at the other end. So
well, yeah, we were headed to Sunrise to get a resupply, and then there was the snack bar. So not only did we get a resupply, but we had like lunch and dinner there.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, this thing is going crazy with my mouse. All right, planning the trip.
Yeah.
I know you put the slide together, Derek, but I wanted to just throw, I got both the Nat Geo map which I brought along with me. And I did buy a copy of Hiking the Wonderland Trail, which I thought was awesome. I did not bring that with me. That's a huge book and it's really useful. And I think the Wonderland guides.
Is there an ebook? Is there an ebook of that? That might be.
You can get an ebook.
That might be the way to go on that one.
I did have that on my phone. So, and that was.
I think I did. I think I did as well, if I recall.
And the wonderlandguides.com, I thought was great when we were trying to like sort out our itinerary, because it has all of the campsites and you can kind of like map out how many days, and it'll tell you how many miles between each, it'll do your whole itinerary for you. So that was kind of useful. We unfortunately, it didn't help us. We'll talk about that. And then the far out guides, I think it used to be called something else.
Was that Gut Hook? Gut Hook.
Yeah. Gut Hook guides. Now it's far out.
That was great to have. That was like, we all
awesome.
Three of us love that on the trail. That was fantastic.
Because it knows where you are, and then you can see like, how much further to water.
Yeah.
Or how much further till I can take this pack off,
Yeah. How much more do I have to, how much have I gone up and how much more do I have to go up? That was another common thing you look at.
So yeah, those far out guides are worth the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Okay. I swear to God, I'm not doing this, guys.
I'm not touching anything.
It's just jumping around. Let me try using these little arrows down here. There we go. I'll just use that. Getting a permit. We tried all three of us tried submitting 3 different itineraries and all of us were denied.
Yeah. So we each submitted 3 itineraries, right?
Yeah.
There's like 9 total itineraries that could have worked, but we all got denied. Yeah.
We all got denied. But we had already booked the time, we'd kind of set aside that period of time, and we had heard that, of course, a portion of all of the permits are reserved for walk-ins. I forget the percentage. Is it 30% or 40%, something like that?
It's actually fairly high. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we thought, well, we'll just go in with the flexibility. We had 2 weeks and we'll go in with the flexibility. We might not get a permit for Monday. We might get one for Tuesday, or we might get one for Wednesday, and we'll just camp, or we'll, figure something out for a few days and then we'll start. As it turned out, we went in, I picked up Jason from the airport in Seattle. We drove down to Longmire and to the visitor center there where the Rangers are. And they gave us the paperwork and a big binder with all of the campsites and the availability. And we filled it out. And it took us about 20 minutes. And we took it back to the counter and they said, here's your permit, you start tomorrow. And it wasn't necessarily our ideal itinerary, because there were some, like the first couple days were pretty long and strenuous. And then we had a few days that were kind of silly short and not strenuous. But it was pretty awesome because we did end up getting some of the really, cherry campsites. Like we had the group camps at Summerland and Indian. What's it? Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was actually still at home when I received the text from you guys saying, we got the permit, this is our itinerary. So I got on and like studied it and printed my own maps and kind of got ready because I was flying the next morning and meeting you guys at, I think I ended up rolling in about 2:30 in the afternoon, and we just kind of like had a quick lunch at the inn and then headed out. And that was,
we had to get going. Yeah.
And it also posed a little bit of logistical challenge when we mailed in our buckets because we couldn't put dates on them for the rangers to really know when we were going to be picking up those buckets. And that ended up having a little issue later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is a really great point. It's a nice segue there for the resupply options. We mailed these buckets and packages to the different, following the instructions on the website. It's all pretty clear on the National Park website. But they say, okay, if you're doing a walk-up permit, you have to put the date, and there's limited space. What they do is they have a big bear-proof box with these containers in it, and there's only so many that will fit at a time. And so they have the rest somewhere else, in some special room somewhere. And I think we were okay at Mowich, but when we went to Sunrise, it was missing. There was one missing, or a couple missing.
My bucket was missing. And I'm like, hey, where's my food for the next 5 days? And they're like, we do have a record that we received it. We don't know where it is. So they kind of looked around a little bit, and they finally went to some office somewhere, and it was stashed back there. And they said, oh, well, you didn't put an exact date on it. And I'm like, well, it was a walk-in, so there was no way for me to possibly know. So I guess my recommendation would be put like the last possible date that you think it would be, so they at least keep it for that day. I forgot exactly what I put, but I guess it wasn't sufficient for them to actually keep it in the bucket. So it all ended well, but there was a couple of nervous moments where I thought I was going to have to raid the little market there and use that for the entire rest of the
You'd be eating cheese and crackers for the next 3 days, 4 days, or whatever.
Yeah.
And Cliff Bars, God forbid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I don't know which one of us started using Lighter Pack first. I know I did not use it for the Wonderland Trail. I started using it after that, but
I've never used it.
So yeah, I think Adam, our friend Adam, started linking us to it when we were preparing for the Teton Crest Trail. And that's when I started using it. And I think for this, I went back in time just to sort of, because this was actually the lightest I've ever backpacked. It was an experiment in ultralight. So I wanted to go back and kind of determine exactly how light I was. This is not accurate. I never really completed it, but this is something I do use from here on out to kind of plan to understand what I'm bringing and how heavy it's going to be.
Yeah, so lighterpack.com is the website. Super easy to use. It's free, and you can create your own categories. Derek's got pack items, his sleep system, his clothing, his electronics, toiletries, tools, all separated. You can do it any way you want. And you can put in the weight and how many of an item that you have, and you end up, the idea is that you end up with your base weight, and then your consumables would go on top of that. So consumables being, like water, which you're constantly consuming, fuel, and then of course food is the biggest one.
Yeah, and you can actually create, one for each trip. So you can have a whole list of like different trips, like you're doing a winter trip, and you can even make a winter trip version and then use that as a template when you create new winter trips from that one. You can, save as a new one. So it's very versatile, and it's super, super helpful. And it also becomes a checklist of kind of looking over, have I packed this thing, which I intended to pack.
Yep. And by the way, I just wanted to, as a side note, if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask any of us, there is a Q&A button that you can go in and toss a question in there. And I see somebody's already done that. So
yeah, I answered one already. So
way to go. Way to go. All right. Oh my gosh, this thing is Now I can't get back to my slide.
There it is.
Oh, that's fun.
We actually went in August, I
Did
believe.
we go in August? Was it
I
August?
think
Okay.
it was August 5th that we actually went in.
Yeah, I knew it was later in July because again, I had done my early July and I knew that was not the way to go. So I knew it was a little later in the year.
How's it going, Jeff?
It's just awesome. I'm going to, what did I just do? Oh my gosh. Screen sharing has stopped. Oh, okay, that's cool. Let's get it going again. And slide.
I'm going to answer a question. The permits you have to submit by the end of March, from what I understand. You can start submitting them in March, and then they kind of close it at the end of March, and then it takes a couple months for them to kind of sort through everything and then get back to you.
Holy moly. Let's see. Sorry about this, guys. I should have rehearsed a little bit better.
Do you want me to give it a try, Jeff, and share it, or?
Sure. Now, hang on. I just gotta find my, here we go. Share screen. Take a breath. And we're back to planning the trip.
Hey, there we go.
Okay,
All right.
no problem.
Hey, there we go. Meal planning.
Yep.
Oh, the first picture there at the cabin, that's Mowich Lake.
Yep.
And you can see those two knock boxes, or what do they call them? But they're bear-proof boxes. They had two of them outside of the cabin, and you just open it up and hopefully find your resupply package. And Daryl, this looks like your stuff as you were getting ready. I don't hear you.
Okay. Yeah. That's me. I was getting ready, and yeah, I definitely ended up not packing as many calories as I needed. But if you look in the back, I definitely packed a 6-pack of beer, and that definitely came in handy as well. But yeah, it was really nice. That was our first resupply, and it was nice to kind of instantly go into your stash of like candy bars or something like that. I remember Jeff had his sugar covered orange slices that were amazing. The Trader Joe's ones.
Yeah, those were great.
It was nice to have, and we all just sort of like broke out the good stuff and shared it with each other, and it was like a nice, almost like Thanksgiving. Like, hey, let's just eat some stuff, and it was nice. It was sunny, and yeah, it's resupplies are always fun, especially if like I did. I made sure to pack distinctly different things in each bucket, so by the time you get to the next bucket, you're already sick of what you're eating. So you open it up, it's like, this is all new. And it ended up being pretty nice to be able to do that.
I, on the other hand, did not do that. I used Evernote and like kind of just mapped out a 4-day meal plan and repeated it for each of the resupplies. So we were, I basically followed this formula, and it was kind of the same, every 4 days. And I kind of regret that. I wish I had put a little more variety in, and I wish I had put probably some kind of like junk food, like Fritos or those little crackers with the orange crackers with the peanut butter inside of them, those would have been pretty awesome.
I just winged it. I just kind of threw a bunch,
Yeah.
I mean, not really, but I didn't really,
you kind of know,
I kind of know. I'm like, all right, here's one day, this little pile is one day, and it's like a dinner and some snacks and whatever. I'll do like, how many bars? All right, how many days? 12 days, great. I'll bring 12 bars or 12 stroop waffles or whatever. I just kind of do stuff that way. I don't do the calorie counting or whatever.
Who has time for that?
Yeah, and always bring chocolate. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
there you
I
go.
bought
Yeah.
fun-sized candy bars, and I think I
Yeah.
shared them with you guys too. And like,
Yeah.
hey, we got fun-sized candy bars. Let's do this. And I think I also brought Oreos, and like it's like I think they're really sweet stuff. By the time you, that's one of the questions for the Q&A is, what is your favorite resupply treat? Number one, chocolate. Especially if you think it's going to be cool enough to store. And number two was the beer. Like that came in my bucket, so I knew that at some point in the next few days, we're going to have nice beers along the trail.
Yeah. So we're talking about how we got there, and I drove up. I actually had a rental car, but only because I think my car was still oddly in the shop for some strange reason. And
It's a Land Rover.
Yeah, Land Rover. And I drove up and picked up Jason at the airport, and we drove back down. So it was a little bit, extra driving there. But and Derek, you had a kind of an interesting experience with your Lyft ride.
Yeah, so I flew into SeaTac and went to their rideshare place, and booked a car. And it's actually really, really nice there because they have a special parking lot. It's all numbered. So when you book a car on Lyft, they'll say, oh, go to spot number 89, and you just walk and they're already ready. So it's like you're not waiting. There's no it's not chaos. You actually just walk up to the car that you're going in. So I go, hey, I'm going to this national park here. Just want to make sure you're okay. It's going to be long, but it's going to be a pretty big fare. And he said, yeah, let's go. Like, so, and he knew it was going to be, an hour and 45 minutes back without a fare probably. So, we drove the whole way. And the thing was, he had dropped me off, I gave big hugs to Jeff and Jason. We're all happy. And suddenly he comes running up, tapping on my shoulders, like, what can I do? I can't close the ride because there's no internet connection here. So he couldn't stop the ride and like bill it because he had no connection at all. So we finally took him up to the Wilderness Information Center where there was Wi-Fi, and he was able to close it there. So that's one good thing to know, is that there's Wi-Fi there if you need to do any last minute thing. But as far as cellular coverage, you're just going to be out of luck by the time you get up there.
Yeah, no cell coverage, but free Wi-Fi there. So that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I did make the distinct choice to use the rideshare because I was calculating a rental car. I'm going to rent one, and it's just going to sit there for 2 weeks, and I'm getting charged per day. And I'm like, it ended up being some huge amount. I'm like, that just doesn't make sense at all. So I kind of risked it for the rideshare, and it ended up working out just fine. And then I wanted to tip him, which I should have done right then and there, but I thought I'd do it after the trip. But I guess you only have a certain amount of days after your ride. So I ended up having to call Lyft saying, hey, I want to tip this guy because he was really, really cool. So they allowed me to do it later.
Oh, nice. And there's been somebody asked in the Q&A, like what our itinerary was when you do a walk up, and basically this is kind of how it works out. So Jason and I had to sit down and kind of go through what we'd like to do, where we'd like to stay. And there were some compromises. Some of the places we wanted to, we didn't get. And then they plugged that all into a computer to make sure that one of the other ranger stations hasn't already given away those campsites. And they printed out our permit. And your permit actually shows you where you should be every day. And it doesn't specify like campsite 1 or 2 or 3, but unless you have the group camp, and we had 2 of those, as you could see highlighted there.
We actually had I guess we didn't have it reserved, but we also had it at
South Moach.
Yeah, South Moach.
Nobody else was there, right?
We were first come, first served. That one, I guess, was
we rolled in at noon.
Yeah. Boy, day 2 doesn't look so bad on paper when you look at this map, but oh my God, that was
yes. So this is the map that I pulled from the National Park Service website.
Yeah.
Put it into Photoshop, instantly annotated it. This is within like an hour after they texted me, hey, we have an itinerary, because I wanted to leave something with my wife as I left. So I plugged all this in, and also to sort of like mentally wrap my mind around what we were actually going to be doing and what days are going to be long, what days are going to be short. So and for me, it was, I think I printed up a version and brought it in too, just so in the morning I can wake up and go, okay, what am I actually doing today?
We were way off on day 2 though. I think we thought it was a 13 mile day, and then we went back and recalculated, and it was like over 18.
Yeah.
Long.
It was
and
long
and
hard.
arduous.
Oh, was it hard? Yeah. and
hot. I think the heat added to that.
Humidity.
It was so hot. Yeah.
And humidity. It was pretty brutal.
So one of the things you might actually, I'll go back one screen here. The actual trail goes this way. From OH, it goes this way. So it kind of circles around here, and we came this way. It's the Spray Park alternate, and we really enjoyed that. I did anyways. I thought it was beautiful.
I did that as a solo trip years before I did the whole trail, and I was so blown away by it that I, or not a solo trip, but I did that with my friend Matt. We did the hiked out to the Spray Park, and then did a night there and came back. I mean, it was like a 3-4 day trip. So,
and you can see here all the wildflowers, that it is amazing,
really stunning up there. Yeah.
There was a little part of me that was maybe a little twinge where I thought, well, we're not doing the Wonderland Trail. We're modifying it, ooh, is that okay? And it's okay. You can totally.
I think it's nicer. I haven't done the bottom part, but by all accounts, it's a much prettier route. I mean, it's kind of one of the more spectacular parts of the park. So yeah. And we didn't even have great visibility up there. Imagine if we had views of the mountain. We had like that one moment where it peaked out, but but other than that, you can kind of see how hazy it was, and
Yeah.
Yeah, it was gorgeous, and I think the other route kind of doesn't gain and lose as much. It just kind of goes down to the valley floor and kind of follows the whole river valley there. But this kind of led you to a more alpine environment. We saw snow, we saw snow fields, we saw, we went above tree line, and I felt like it added just that much more variation to what we were seeing from day to day. So I would highly recommend that route for anybody who's going.
So one of the things that I really enjoyed about the Wonderland Trail were all of the mushrooms that we saw. I had never seen so many different varieties of mushrooms. They were everywhere on the trail, and it actually spurred me to want to learn more about mushrooms. I never got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, let's eat this and see what happens, but I've actually started educating myself a little bit about, what mushrooms are edible and how to know and how to prepare and harvest them and all of that good stuff. So next time we're going to feast on some sauteed mushrooms.
Sweet. I looked up this polka dot one today, and that one is poisonous, but it's also psychedelic. So
there you go.
What an interesting trip that would be.
Well, yeah. Well, so there's the question is like, if you eat the whole thing, is that bad, or is it, how much do you have to eat, or should you eat? Yeah, those are the questions I don't know the answers to, so I wasn't going to go there. Oh, some of the highlights.
So one of the highlights we had on the very bottom one is that we ended up meeting a group of people. We got the group campsite at Summerland, which included this very cool shelter here. And then we ended up meeting some people and saying, hey, come along. And it was, one of the person's birthdays, and I ended up giving them one of the beers, and they were sharing, I don't know, was it tequila, or I forgot what it was, whiskey, and it was a very festive occasion, and it was one of those moments on the trail that, sure, you're out there for wilderness, but you also have this social interaction on a busy trail like this. It ended up being one of the highlights of the whole trip.
Yeah, and we were celebrating somebody's birthday here. It was like an impromptu birthday party.
Yeah, I think the blue jacket there pouring with Mike. He's a fireman. I think his name was Mike, right? From Firemen from Las Vegas, I remember. But I think it's
Las Vegas.
Super nice guy. Yeah, really nice guy.
This guy right here.
Yeah. And then there are the nice Canadian. There's a group of Canadian women who hiking club or something that were there. Yeah. We saw them again.
They were like the infectious energy, and they were just having a great time. Yeah, it was really cool. And then there's the father-daughter, and they knew about mushrooms, and they actually sauteed some mushrooms, and we were all jealous because it sounded really good at that point in time.
Good.
But he shared his jerky, and his jerky was fantastic. He brought too much of it, so
homemade jerky.
Homemade jerky, yeah.
Jason, you were acting like a bear and eating the berries.
They're good. Blueberries are delicious. So, and I mean, the whole trail pretty much is lined, when it's in the trees, is lined with those things.
And they're organic.
Yeah, and some places they were picked through, probably by bears and other hikers. And some places there were tons of them, like you can see in that bush there. They're really delicious. They're not as sweet as like what you buy in the store. They're a little more tart, but it's kind of like when you've been eating like freeze-dried food and sort of packed food, preservatives and whatever, having that little fresh kind of flavor, that kind of, I don't know, but tang was quite nice. It was a very nice bonus.
Yeah, and I put a couple of these pictures in here to kind of illustrate like the highs literally and lows of the trail.
Yeah.
You get to the top and you're on this, you feel like you're on top of the world and get views forever. You can even see some of the other like Mount Adams and stuff like way in the distance. And then you go down to the bottom, you drop down after that, straight down, you go to the bottom, then you're crossing a glacial river where, oftentimes they will have one of these suspension bridges over it or one of those wooden bridges. But then when we got to Mowich, was it Mowich River or South Mowich River, we had to cross by wading the river. And
then also at White Wolf, the one after on the way up to Panhandle, or the one after Sunrise. Remember at the bottom?
I think that one had a bridge, but it was close to being.
Yeah, but it was
It was almost yeah.
So you can
those were amazing. Those are amazing bridges. That's really cool. The other thing that I think was interesting or different for me was that these rivers that are flowing underneath them, there's so much sediment in them that the water's milky, and you can't even filter that water because it'll just clog your water filter right away. So you have to find another source from like a little tributary somewhere where it's clearer and clean. And so that was sometimes a little bit of a challenge, but it was really neat to see.
Yeah, and then when we were at South Mowich, we were so close to one, we could actually hear the little rocks in the water like tumbling all night. Kind of like
these are like bowling ball size rocks, and they're tumbling down the river and knocking into each other, and that's what it sounded like too. It sounded like bowling balls in a bowling alley or bowling pins knocking around.
Yeah, and these were the various man-made structures. Again, you go out here to be in the wilderness, but we ended up actually having a great time hanging out on the porches of some of the patrol cabins at Mystic Lake and at Golden Lakes, and we ended up just enjoying ourselves. And we ended up going there, and a lot of times we would get there early enough where we could just kind of hang out and enjoy it and get that sense of place and just relax. And that ended up being one of the highlights of the trip as well.
Yeah, so the bottom right one, funny story from my first trip, again, there was so much snow, like that whole, basically the front of it was dug out, but the snow was pretty much almost up to the roof, like around it. And there were I think there were at least 10, 12 plus people all crammed into that little shelter sleeping because you couldn't, all the other campgrounds were buried in snow. So yeah, that was not the most comfortable night of sleep.
This one actually had bunks on the walls that we slept on, and that was luxury.
Yeah, especially that late in the trip, because that was like our 10th or 11th night. So I think it was our 11th. It might have even been our 12th, right? Because then it was Maple Creek and then out. So yeah, I think that was our second to last night. So yeah.
Let's see. Oh yeah, talk about crossing the river. Yeah, sometimes there was a log with a little railing, like you can see in the background there, and sometimes there was not. And that water was
cold,
moving fast. And it was pushing, it was pushing us around.
Yeah, and it instantly filled your shoes with sediment, like instant. Yeah. So you had to empty it all out, and you had all the stuff. And I'll mention this a little bit later. I'll refer to it, but I brought the wrong kind of trail shoes to do that. So I had Allbirds. So I wore my Allbirds in here because my other ones were big boots. And they ended up being wet for many days after this and basically being like a pound a piece. So yeah, I would definitely recommend bringing some kind of water friendly shoes in order to do this.
Oh, so you might, I'm going to just jump in here because if you look on Derek's video screen in the background, he's got all of these panoramas he's printed out. He's the king of the panorama, I think. And these are a couple. So just, this is the sort of the thing that made the Wonderland Trail so wonderful, is these kind of views.
Yeah, like the first one is Emerald Ridge.
Emerald Ridge, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that was what halfway through an incredibly long day, but it's I don't know. Frank Lloyd Wright has a theory or a description of how he builds his homes, where he has these narrow hallways and then open up to a nice big room. It's called embrace and release. And that's what I felt like this trail was, where you're kind of walking through a tree tunnel, you know, kind of getting to the top. You have some views here and there, but once you get to the top, it's this release and you are just simply stunned by the views around, and then you drop down again, and then, you know, just rinse and repeat. And it's just, I don't know, it's kind of like it's what you're working for. You get to the top of that ridge and you're like, this is absolutely amazing, and I've never seen anything like it. And every side of the mountain has a different personality, but it's just as beautiful as the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the top one is just past Panhandle Gap, and we could actually see, I think, Mount Adams in the distance there. And then the one underneath is Mystic Lake, and that's one of the ones we swam in and really enjoyed ourselves.
It was super windy on that pass, as I recall.
Yes, and we actually hiked down a little bit so we could take this picture, because
Yeah,
on the actual trail itself, we were just getting buffeted like crazy.
Yeah, you can kind of see Mount Adams, the kind of peeking up a little bit, kind of in the middle. Yeah,
right there.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was howling up top there. But that is a beautiful spot, that gap, and that was fully covered in snow and quite kind of scary when I did it the first time.
Yeah, we crossed a couple small snowfields, but it was no real biggie when
big. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what we would do differently, guys.
Yeah, so I already mentioned better camp shoes. Like now, ever since then, I bought a pair of Crocs. Actually, it's an off-brand Crocs, and that's what I use for my camp and any river crossings. And actually, even in the Arctic Circle Trail, I just wore my Ultras through all the rivers because I was wet all day anyway. So, but yeah, typically I think something like that would do better for these river crossings.
And those Crocs are also great for weddings and funerals. That Derek generally wears them to all those kind of formal events.
And also fastest known time.
Off-brand.
Your dress Crocs. Yeah.
But I've also become a believer in synthetic down as well, especially after the Arctic Circle Trail, where I had issues keeping my my down puffy jacket dry because the humidity was just too much. So what happened in the whole first part of the trail is of the Wonderland Trail is, you know, I would hang my towel out at night and it would be wetter in the morning than it was when I hung it. So stuff never dried on the whole western side of the trail. So I have some pictures where it shows me wearing the puffy jacket, and it's just like drooping on me and not really providing a lot of warmth. So I think anywhere, including this particular hike that has that kind of humidity, I would opt for a synthetic down jacket.
A little different than the High Sierra, where everything dries out in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what we're all highly used to. So yeah, things do dry a little differently there. And then again, I would bring more food. I ended up eating a lot of Jeff and Jason's tortillas and Nutella, and because they brought a lot of food and they were happy to give it to me because those tortillas are not light.
Nope.
But yeah, just kind of, it's a rigorous trip. So you know, do not underestimate how many calories that you would need.
I mean, I had the benefit of having done it before, so I kind of, most of it before, so I kind of had some idea. I guess the one thing I mean, and now I do, I would have brought less camera gear, and I brought too much camera, and some of it we didn't really have time to use it, and then a lot of days you didn't have visibility, so it's kind of like, well, I'd have brought one less lens, and I brought 2 camera bodies, and one of them ended up dying up there anyway, so it ended up being dead weight. So yeah, and then if you are doing it, you make sure you have a camera that's weather sealed and everything, because it's very, very soggy and very wet. I mean, we had that whole stretch, like 3-4 day stretch on the northwest side that was just rainy. Wasn't like, it never really poured on us, but it was never really dry either. And it took Derek like 3 or 4, like a couple days to dry off after that. He just was never dry and never comfortable. That was Derek's low point.
It wasn't until sunrise, which is fully 2/3 of the way done with the trip, where my shoes finally dried out. And where I'm like, oh, I can actually wear these, and they're not a pound a piece on my back. So bring cash or something, because you're definitely going to want to eat at the sunrise get place. Yeah, for sure. And there's that little shop market there, so you can buy stuff. There's also a place to eat and a shop at Longmire, but not at Mowich, just so you know.
Not at Mowich.
If your supply doesn't get there, you can go beg from campers, I guess, because there's a car campground there, and I've heard of people doing that if their resupply doesn't show up. But there's nowhere to buy food, whereas you could do pretty well at the other 2 places if you had to.
And I think we all bought a few snacks from the market at Sunrise. I know I did, because I know, especially 2/3 of the way done, we were all pretty hungry at that point too, and kind of wanting to taste something different.
I wish you could present smell as well as images on your screen, just like how we smelled at this.
Because this is our final picture back to the car. Happy to be having pizza soon.
And it was a long
probably
day.
Smelly.
It was a long day and a soggy day too. So it's not that's a nice part of the trail, but it's not quite up to what we had been through the previous few, maybe 4 or 5 days. So.
And we saw a lot of day hikers in this area. This
it was crowded.
Center and Paradise and all that. And the one thing I did on this day, on the very last day, is I actually started slowing down and eating as many blueberries as I possibly could, because I told myself at some point in time I'm going to wish I was here again. And some point in time I'm going to wish I would have had more blueberries. I would have savored this moment. So I just started slowing down, at least until the last 2 miles. And then we're like, let's go. Let's get to the car.
And then we got to that one log bridge across that last river.
Yes.
And there's tourists hanging out doing Instagram shots. And there's like a line of people waiting to get their picture on this freaking bridge. And we're like, can we just please cross? Well, all we want to do is cross.
Our car's right there. Can we just
one nice thing too, there's a lot of good places to car camp the night before. So it's another thing to take into consideration that we maybe haven't mentioned. We camped, I think Cougar Rock is the name of the one that Jeff and I
Cougar Rock, which was just up from Longmire.
The first time I did it, I camped at that White Water or White Wolf that went below Sunrise, because we were starting at sunrise.
White River.
I mean, if you do Mowich, there's a campground at Mowich. So lots of nice car camping places you can go before the thing.
I'd like to kind of tack on to my last sentiment as far as enjoying the moment. So we were at that great shelter at Summerland when, it was not a huge long day. It was actually a pretty nice day, but there was a nice climb to get there. And, I was relaxing in the shelter. And when Jeff comes, it's like, hey, come down here. You got to see this. I'm like, okay, I'm kind of tired, but I can get water later. But he's, like, no, come on. So I drop down here, and there's this beautiful creek. There's flowers. There's grass. There's glacier. You could, that's actually Rainier at the top of that picture. And it's like, yes, enjoy the moment, savor it, be present. And, so I soaked my foot in here, and I, stayed here for half an hour. We both kind of got our little spots on the creek and just kind of hung out. And, it was great just to be there and savor that moment. And I have this, printed up in my house as well, just because it reminds me constantly, be open for that beauty as you go.
And always, always, always go in the lake.
Yes. Yes.
It
No
may-
matter.
Yeah, it may be really cold.
But you're going to be happy. You're going to be clean. We all went to the patrol cabin after this, and your whole body tingles because you just went in there, and we were all super, super, super happy. And, we stink that much less by going into the lake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
One cool story from my first trip, coming down into Indian Bar, me and my friend Jeff, who I was hiking with, a different Jeff, obviously, saw a wolverine. And it was funny. So we went to the rain. The next we had to jump off the trail and whatever. And we were car camping for a night and went to the ranger program. And we said, "Hey, we saw this wolverine." He's like, there's no wolverines here. I think you're mistaken, But anyway, I went to the Paradise Ranger Station. They have like a wildlife report, and I reported it. She's like, "Okay, well, we don't think they're here, but And then sure enough, 2 years later, in the news, all over the news, wolverines sighted in Mount Rainier. So we were vindicated on that. And I'm
All right.
99% sure I saw a wolverine running on the snow beneath me, coming down into Indian Bar. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, this is another thing. It's like, sure, this is an adventure. Sure, this is a challenge. But what it came down with is you're on an experience with good friends. We all had our good days. We all had our low moments. But we're always encouraging each other. We're always sharing this. And, I don't think I would have enjoyed this trip half as much if it wasn't with you guys and been able to share it with you. And it just makes it all the better when you can just share it. And so this was like, it was a low point because of the rain and everything. And I think it was like, time to bust out this beer. Let's just do this. And it ended up lifting all of our spirits, mine, of course, the most, because I had gone down to get water and I slipped on a rock and like bruised my tailbone. And I was just like, it was raining and my tent was kind of failing a little bit. So I had a wet tent wall on my forehead as I lay down. It just was like, I was missing my family. So it was like all this low point, but I'm with friends and they boosted me up and it ended up being all okay because I was with them.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I'm glad you broke out those beers too, because it was kind of a miserable day, a rainy day. And our campsite at that particular spot was really tight.
Yeah,
and there was no view or anything because we were just like we were in the clouds, and
the view was supposed to be spectacular of this glacier.
Yes.
We saw it for about 5 minutes, like through the mist, and there was
right at sunset.
Yeah, it was pretty though, and it was a very it was kind of a crazy campsite. It was literally just nudged up against this ridge wall. It was very small. There wasn't much space, and all the other ones we were at had plenty of space for our 3 tents, from what I recall. But this one was not. It was 2 sites. Someone had beaten us to the other one, which was a little bigger. So we had to kind of 3 of us cram in there, and I don't know, you didn't say in your regrets, Derek, but what about like freestanding tent? Would that have been, if you were to do it again, would you bring a freestanding tent?
Yeah, so like I said, I was experimenting with ultralight. So I had a 1-person ultralight tent that was a trekking pole tent, and which requires the perfect amount of geometry in order for it to work. And in this particular site, it worked great on most of the sites, but on this particular site, it was so muddy that the stakes wouldn't stay in. So I put rocks on there, but those rocks just slid across the mud. So I could not get the right geometry. So I was like done with that tent by the time. I ended up using it a couple more times after this, but I sold it. I am experimenting now with another trekking pole tent, but I think if I were to do this trail again, I would definitely bring a freestanding tent.
Yeah, I've actually purchased a trekking pole tent, single wall, this year. I think we've talked about that a little bit. And when Jason and I did this trip up in North Cascades National Park in September, at the end of September, I toyed with the idea of bringing it, and I thought, I remembered the experience you had here, and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to go back to my tried and true Big Agnes, copper spur, double wall. It just it works.
Yeah, you can put it anywhere.
Yeah. This has been a lot of fun. I know we've got some questions, and I know Jason's been busily answering all the questions in there. I want to just stop here and just first of all thank everybody who joined tonight. This has been really cool for us just to chat about our experience, and hopefully you've picked up a few things along the way. And I thought it might be fun just to kind of go through like some of the questions that have come in. Like Chris asked, when do permits open? We did answer that question, I think.
March 15th or something like
March
that.
15th.
Mid-March, something like that. I mean, they change it every year, so
yeah, the best place to go is the
yeah,
NPS website, and they'll have the info, and then of course you go to recreation.gov to actually book it.
Yeah, but I would check if you want to do it January. By January I'd be looking to see, and if I recall, they'll tell you the day that, that's roughly when they announce the day that the permits go up. And the one thing is it's not like a dial kind of thing, where you got to speed dial and try to get like Radiohead concert tickets or something. I mean, it's like a 15-day window for you to submit them all. So as long as you submit within those 15 days, then it's a lottery. So you don't need to worry, like
the year we did it, I think it was from the 15th to the 30th. So you had
I think that's right.
two full weeks to submit, and then they just draw them at random, apparently. So
and I think like what I'll say, and this is the same with most of these like really high demand kind of hikes, like the JMT and everything. The hard part is if you have like a narrow window, right? This is a lot easier than the JMT because it's so much shorter. But like you can like if you give yourself 2 weeks and you like we did, and you show up, like, hey, we want to walk in, you'll probably be fine. So
that's kind of what we heard, and that worked out for us. Yeah,
sure did. Yeah, it did. And again, it kind of worked out great because we got those great campgrounds in the end, because it was like 2 weeks out and like a third were saved. We sort of hacked it in a way, because like all the nice camp, no one else was like picking a 2-week itinerary. So like the third of the permits that were saved for walk-ins were all kind of available for the really choice campsites, 2 weeks out. And we had kind of like less choice ones on the first couple days, because most of the good ones were taken.
Yeah, and somebody asked about the ideal number of days, and I didn't mean to give the impression that our itinerary was too long.
No.
I think the people who take the most amount of time are the winners.
Yeah.
You get the best experience. I just think that ideally I would have broken up a couple of the really long days, and maybe, put some of that on the short days.
No, I would agree with that. I think like you really have to keep in mind how hard this is. There are no easy miles in this. Maybe there's like 1 easy mile, 2 easy miles in the whole thing. I mean, otherwise you're going up or you're going down. So just really, really take that into account, like try to, just know that it's quite difficult and the miles are pretty hard. And the terrain and in places, the terrain is quite hard. Some of it's quite nice and foresty, but some of it's, rock and steep, and, and
So I know, like Jason, you and I have both done the John Muir Trail, and all three of us, we did the Teton Crest Trail, which is also kind of on the shorter side of like a through hike. And what I kind of feel like the Wonderland Trail might be sort of the perfect introduction to longer hikes.
I think that's a great way. I think that's a great way to describe it, because it's like, it's it's like a 2-week investment or a week and a half an investment of your time. So you don't need to like, get a month off of work if you're, have a day job and you're not a teacher, right? You don't have to get a month off plus to do it. It's hard and it's challenging, but I do feel that you do get that feeling of immersion. That's also why I'd recommend going a little bit slower. I mean, if you have a week to do it and you want in 7 days, that's great. But those are going to be long days, and you're not going to get to like lounge in the lake and swim in lakes as much as we did, or goof off or take naps and relax. I mean, we had a couple days that were nice like that. And then we had a couple of really long, hard days too. So, I mean, that's through hiking though, right? Every day is a little different. So I think that's a great way to describe it, Jeff. I think it's kind of like a great gateway drug into longer stuff to see if you like it and see if it's something you enjoy.
Yeah, and since this one was my longest one, I felt like I did, develop some skills as far as planning and understanding the highs and lows, and really getting, I mean, it's long enough to have true hiker hunger.
Yeah.
Like a 3-night trip, you're gonna be hungry, but once you get to like day 10, you have hiker hunger.
Yeah.
And we also had to plan resupplying, so we had to really kind of think ahead, and it's that many days. So I think, it's a great introductory, and I think for me, helped me hone my skills when it comes to doing a hike of this length.
Yeah.
Rebecca was asking about how difficult the river crossings were. I think that there were only 2 that were maybe a little bit tricky. Well, actually, 1 that was really tricky, and that was that picture that you saw. I think that was me wading across, and we kind of like went back and forth and up and down looking for the best place to pass because the water was moving really fast. And you know, in the end, you know, we all had trekking poles and we were able to cross okay. It was not a big deal. And of course we were all there, so you know, if somebody did fall in, you know, somebody else could, you know, grab their hand or whatever. The other place was on the other side, the south of Sunrise. I forget the name of that crossing, but it wasn't, we didn't have to go in the water. There was a log with a railing, but the river was running so high that it was almost over the top of that log.
And later in the day, from what we heard, it was over the top. Like there, and that's one thing to know. Like if you have a river crossing that you know, if you can figure that out, do it earlier in the day before it gets hot, because obviously as the day heats up, the more the snow and ice and everything melts and the flow increases. So if you have hard river crossings or know about them, and the earlier in the day you do them, the better.
Yeah, and if you have fear of heights, it might be a little challenging crossing some of those because they do one person at a time and they do wiggle quite a bit. But if you just keep going, you're good. And one thing to know is that every winter, a lot of those bridges are just dust. So that's one of the first things that the Forest Service does is they go in there and rebuild those log bridges. So typically most of the crossings will have some sort of log bridge and should be taken care of depending on the weather and the year and when you go.
Yeah, if there's been a recent storm that washes the last one out.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Jason and Derek, thanks for joining me tonight.
Yeah, that was fun.
All of our guests. It's been really fun to be able to revisit this story. I like this. I like this. This is a lot of fun to
walk down memory lane.
Revisit our trip. Makes me want to
hope to see some of you in person on Sunday.
So, yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, so come up and say hi if you do.
Yep. And well, everybody have a great night, and I'll hopefully we'll see you on Sunday at the SoCal Community Celebration.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a good night.
Night.
Bye-bye.